Primary and secondary students go back to school after the summer break. And the China-Africa Forum kicks off in Beijing.
Hello and a very good evening. A university student leader today advocated Hong Kong independence right after an inauguration ceremony for undergraduates at the Chinese university. Lawmakers and officials said there should be no room for discussion on the topic. Sharon Tang reports.
Greetings from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. When asked to comment on the student leader's speech, the university's vice-chancellor said the school recognizes the importance of free speech and academic freedom, but it certainly does not support Hong Kong independence.
We will always allow discussion when it's done in a rational and peaceful and mutually respectful way. In any of these topics, we encourage the students to communicate with us.
It's not the first time that a university student leader has called for Hong Kong independence at a ceremony marking the start of a new school year. But the city's education chief said it would be inappropriate for one to express such views on such occasions. A lawmaker said the university should be held accountable.
Whether or not you provide the portal for a particular speaker to complete a talk to advocate independence of Hong Kong, which is a clear-cut issue against the basic law, as well as it would harm the public interests of Hong Kong.
Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Schools reopened today after the summer break, but some of those in Northern District already foresee the possibility of having to cut classes due to fewer students. Kena Chu reports.
Fewer than 100 students returned to this school in Tsingyi. Its headmaster said if the head count remains low, they might have to remove one of its 5 primary 1 classes. That's not the only school facing a decreased number of cross-border students. In 2013, the SAR government stopped letting doubly non-permanent resident women give birth locally, meaning this year is the last time local primary schools receive doubly non-permanent newcomers. What has caused the student shortage? Perhaps easier access for local students to study on the mainland. Chu Kwok-keung, who chairs Northern District Primary School Headmasters Conference, wants the government to roll out a scheme to retain teachers made redundant. It is forecast that in 2020 to 2021, there will only be some 55,000 Primary 1 students, which is around 1/5 less than the current figure. While concerns about teachers linger, there are worries too for students in Wong Tai Sin. It's where a majority of the 28 local dengue fever have originated from. That's why this primary school has strengthened its anti-mosquito measures. Safety campaigns were also carried out in other parts of town. Officers targeted youngsters as more than 860 accidents last year involved students, often because they were too engrossed in their mobile gadgets while crossing the road.
We're going to enhance our deployment on the street. First of all, we're going to have emergency traffic control center, enhance our enforcement actions, especially around school areas.
The police also reminded parents to adhere to parking rules and escort the kids when sending them to school. Kena Chu, TVB News.
Elsewhere in Asia, President Xi Jinping pledged that Chinese investment in Africa is a win-win situation for both the continent and Beijing. Xi was speaking at the start of a summit designed to deepen cooperation between the two sides, while also playing up Africa's role in the Belt and Road Initiative.
Beijing is putting on a friendly face for visiting African leaders and dignitaries who are in the capital for a summit between China and representatives from the continent. It's a gathering which is held every 3 years. Speaking at the start of the summit today, President Xi Jinping spoke of the friendship between the two sides and that China's investment in Africa came with no political strings attached. He pledged that Beijing would never seek to interfere with African affairs and that China sought cooperation that would bring mutual benefits and prosperity to both sides. Xi promised China would provide $60 billion in financial support to Africa, broken down into various aid, interest-free loans, concessional loans, credit lines and special funds. China would also expand its imports from Africa and help African financial firms issue bonds in the Chinese financial markets. Chinese firms would be encouraged to invest at least $10 billion in Africa over the next 3 years. African business leaders at the summit welcomed the new round of investment.
We're seeing China coming in and working with African governments is leading infrastructure to inside the inland of Africa. So that really creates a different type of economic development, because then we're starting to see connectivity within the African countries that hasn't been there for many, many years.
Beijing says this year's summit will strengthen Africa's role in the Belt and Road Initiative to link China by sea and land with Southeast and Central Asia, the Middle East, Europe and Africa. Beijing has had to fend off criticism it is only interested in resource extraction in Africa to feed its economy. Critics say the projects Beijing funds have poor environmental safeguards and that too many of the workers for them are flown in from China rather than using local African labour.
The billionaire founder and chief executive of Chinese e-commerce firm JD.com has returned to China after his arrest in the United States. Richard Liu was arrested in the US state of Minnesota on suspicion of criminal sexual conduct. He was later released after what the company said was a false accusation. Minneapolis police say an investigation is ongoing and declined to provide details of the arrest. JD.com is China's second largest e-commerce company after Alibaba.
2 Reuters journalists were sentenced to 7 years in prison by a Myanmar court for the illegal possession of official documents. The decision was met with international condemnation that will add to the outrage over the military's alleged human rights abuses against Rohingya Muslims. Alan Bugnia reports.
Hua Lon and Cha So-u had been reporting on the brutal crackdown on the Rohingyas when they were arrested and charged with violating the Official Secrets Act last December. They told the court police planted the documents on them. One police witness testified that the restaurant meeting where they got the documents was a setup to entrap the pair. Still, the judge found them guilty and sentenced them each to 7 years in jail.
Without any evidence of wrongdoing, and in the face of compelling evidence of a police setup, today's ruling condemns them to the continued loss of their freedom and condones the misconduct of security forces. This is a major step backward in Myanmar's transition to democracy.
The case has drawn worldwide attention as an example of how democratic reforms have stalled under the civilian government of Nobel Peace Laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, who took power in 2016. Although the military maintains control of several key ministries, Suu Kyi's rise to government had raised hopes of an accelerated transition to democracy.
Going forward, there has to be a renewed campaign for media freedom and trying to explain to Aung San Suu Kyi and the Myanmar government that critical commentary, investigative journalism are part of the framework of a real democracy. This is sending a signal to the rest of the Myanmar reporters that if you cross the military, if you cross the government, they can make your life a living hell.
The two men said they will appeal. Hua Lon's wife gave birth to the couple's first child on August 10th. He still hasn't seen his daughter. Alan Bugnia, TVB News.
Scientists say that the mysterious headaches and bouts of nausea experienced by US diplomatic staff in Cuba and China may have been caused by microwave weapons. According to US media reports, scientists studying the ailments which affected dozens of diplomatic staff think they were caused by these weapons designed to incapacitate its targets. Cuba has denied any role or knowledge of the incidents, which were reported last year and led to the evacuation of staff from the US Embassy in Havana. In June this year, the US sent home staff from China after they reported similar symptoms.
Thousands of people across Russia protested against the government's plan to raise the pension age. The biggest demonstration took place in Moscow. The group marched about 2 kilometers away from the Kremlin. Veteran Communist Party leader Gennady Zyuganov was front and centre during the rally. He called the proposed pension scheme cannibalistic reform. Days before the rally, President Vladimir Putin went on television and said the government is willing to roll back the initial changes. The retirement age for women would be reset at 60 as opposed to the original plan of 63 years of age. Currently, females in the country can retire at 55. There would be no change for men, who will see the retirement age increase from 60 to 65. The average life expectancy in Russia stands at about age 67 for men and 78 for women.
And still to come on the news tonight. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte begins a visit to Israel. In Brazil, a huge fire at the National Museum in Rio de Janeiro. And John McCain laid to rest at the US Naval Academy in Maryland.
咩？做咩搞到面黑麻麻啊？
是咁的，近排我洗頭咧洗極都唔乾淨。我聽網上好多人講碳可以吸走污垢，我咪試下中水佢嚟洗頭咯。我咪好有科學頭腦咧。
我唔直接答你，用實驗結果答你。呢兩杯咧就係防頭皮污垢嘅液體，而嗰一碗咧就係活性炭。喺其中一杯倒入活性炭，然後攪勻，將兩杯液體過濾，隔走啲碳，睇下啲水有咩變化。
你呢杯好 pure 喎，啲油去晒邊啊？
活性炭比一般炭高60倍吸附能力，吸走晒液體中嘅污垢微粒。
咁就啱啦，即係我去洗頭啊！
洗頭梗係用洗頭水啦，好似呢支 Rejoice 全身磁力吸淨洗髮露，佢加入咗活性微米炭，可以吸走頭油、頭皮同埋異味。
啊，咁咪好似頭皮吸塵機咁咯，借嚟洗洗先。啲頭髮好耐冇試過咁柔順清爽，我啲仙氣終於翻嚟啦！聽講而家仲做緊10蚊 coupon，快啲去試下啦！
And a warm welcome back to TVB News. Rodrigo Duterte has become the first president of the Philippines to visit Israel. Securing tourism, labour and defence deals will be top of the agenda during his 4-day tour. But the trip comes amid controversy. 2 years ago, Duterte compared his anti-drug campaign in the Philippines to the Holocaust during World War II. We get more now from Peter Caveas.
Rodrigo Duterte was greeted warmly at a hotel in Jerusalem upon his visit to Israel. But back home, he's under fire for his war on drugs. Thousands have been killed. Some critics describe the killings as executions. But on the streets of Israel, his supporters say he's doing a good job.
They said human rights, but my president said human life, because he is protecting the millions of the Filipinos dying on drugs.
That war on drugs has been helped by Israel. The Philippines recently acquired Israeli-made arms to help the police force. The fight against the illegal drug trade led Duterte to compare himself to Hitler. He said he'd be happy to slaughter addicts on the scale of the Jewish Holocaust. Obviously a touchy subject in this mostly Jewish nation. Duterte has since apologized for the remark. The Philippine Foreign Ministry says the issue has been settled. But still to be settled are trade deals. Peter Caveos, TVB News.
US Senator John McCain's final journey ended on a grassy hill at the US Naval Academy in Maryland. A motorcade carrying McCain's casket arrived for a private memorial on the last of 5 days of tributes. McCain chose the location of his resting place overlooking the Severn River and beside his longtime friend, Admiral Chuck Larson. In a soaring tribute, 4 jets from the US Navy's Blue Angel Squadron streaked overhead. One of the jets veered upward in the missing man formation. McCain died August 25th from brain cancer at the age of 81. Back in Hong Kong, the local section of the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Rail Link is set to enter service in just less than 3 weeks. Despite the projected visitor numbers, some restaurateurs have declined to expand their business by opening shops at the West Kowloon terminus. Hayley Joe explains.
Just in 20 days, the West Kowloon station will welcome its first batch of travelers. Operators have been busy introducing their facilities at the station, which covers 400,000 square meters of usable floor space. The high-speed rail terminus will come complete with over 30 food outlets. Mr. Long is one of the businessmen the MTR Corporation approached to open a restaurant at the train station. He'll be expanding his franchise with a 5,000 square foot shop for his award-winning dim sum. Ironically, it's the location that's made it hard to fill 60 job vacancies at his latest venture. Applicants told me the site is troublesome to get to, especially in the early morning when we need people to come in and start preparing food, he said. Another local brand that's been invited to open shop at West Kowloon is not rushing into things. The manager declined the offer upon inspecting the central kitchen, which he thinks is inconveniently located in the food court. The MTRC did not say how many of their shops at West Kowloon Station have been successfully rented out at this stage, even if the clock is ticking to the opening day. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Expect large-scale activities around town to mark 40 years since China's reform and opening up. What will the celebrations achieve, and how will that change people's perspective on the country? Matthew Cheung wears many hats. Last month he took on another job to lead his 10th government committee. This one celebrates 40 years since China's reform and opening up, though there were no initiatives in the past to mark the 20th or 30th anniversaries. But are there not more pressing issues that the government should be dealing with and prioritising?
This would not certainly distract from our attention to taking forward other government agenda items. One of the matters on our agenda, and is, as I said, is well worthwhile doing it.
So worthwhile, the authorities have specially set up a website and designed a logo for accredited entities to use. The idea is for local communities and businesses to initiate their own programs and celebrate how far the country has come. Could this campaign stir up resentment when there are still calls for Hong Kong to break away from Chinese rule 21 years after the handover?
I don't think so. I won't use the word ungrateful. I think some people need to be more familiar. Without the country's opening a reform, Hong Kong could never ever have been now one of the world's leading financial centres.
There's no clear way to measure the success of this project besides emphasising the city's increasing connectivity with the mainland, highlighted by this year's opening of the high-speed rail link and the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge.
With Greater Bay Area, it will enhance our competitive edge. The Silicon Valley of China. This is exactly what the leadership wants from Hong Kong, and Hong Kong will play a pivotal role.
Cheung hopes state leaders can visit the city in December, when there will be a large-scale seminar and photo exhibition marking the start of the country's reform and opening up 40 years ago. An official ceremony in Central today to mark the 73rd anniversary of victory in the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression. The event started at 8 a.m. sharp at City Hall Memorial Garden. Current and former chief executives of the SAR, officials and lawmakers attended the ceremony. They paid their respects to those who fell fighting the invasion forces. In 2014, the National People's Congress Standing Committee designated September 3rd as China's Victory Day in the war. And that's all from